What is up, YouTube? This is your host, Ranee B, here to spill that homicidal tea. And today's case is actually reason that I decided to bring this one up out of my archives, because I've had this one half written for years now, was because it was actually on 2020 not too long ago. So I was like, oh my gosh, I've totally forgotten about Sierra. So yeah, I thought that let's dig up that old script and go through it and actually give Sierra the justice that she deserves, because she deserves to be highlighted on this channel. She definitely was a good cat. And I mean, just one of our typical victims, just awesome, and just another one of the good ones to go. I mean, everything about her that you learn is just pure. And I don't know why you don't hear, well, this guy was a real bastard that he got killed. You know, I mean, you never hear that. I mean, it's just always these awesome, young, bright, talented, just great people. So anyway, this one's kind of a long one. I don't know if it's long because the scripts I'm writing are just getting better, or maybe just these stories are longer. I don't know, probably the latter. But anyway, so let's go ahead and get into it. It's the solved homicide case of Sierah Joughin. Sierah Joughin was born on February 11, 1996. She graduated in 2014 from Evergreen High School in Delta, Ohio. She attended the University of Toledo after graduating from high school, but she returned home to complete her studies before her junior year. Sierra had a reputation for being confident, outgoing, and so assured of herself. Like, you felt more confident around her. But I mean, who could blame her? I mean, look at her. Well, on July 19th, 2016, Sierra was riding her bike to visit her boyfriend, Josh. It was a 6-mile trek, not too far. So, you know, she was just ecstatic to be able to finally ride this awesome bike that she'd scored from a yard sale. She was so excited about it because it was actually in great shape. So, well, they hung out for a while. And when it was time for her to leave, Josh insisted on following her on his motorcycle as long as he could until she got annoyed with him. And there's actually a video of her going, just will you stop? Go away. It's so funny because that was at that point they said their goodbyes and went their separate ways. At 9:30 p.m., Sheila, her mother, returned home from some continuing education classes and said that upon entering her house that she noticed that Sierra's bedroom light was out. She didn't think anything was, weird at first because she thought she was just probably still at Josh's place. Well, at about 10:30 that night, Josh called to see if Sheila had heard from Sierra because he claimed that she had left his house at around 7 o'clock earlier that night. He'd not been able to get in contact with her, and that was strange because Sierra didn't miss a phone call. I mean, when a phone call came through, she was there. She picked it up. When a text came through, she texted back. Like, she was attached to her phone. So for her not to pick up a call was weird. Her family immediately reached out to her circle of friends, posted requests for anyone who had seen her to contact them on Facebook. And they even went down to the Lyons Royalton Fire Department because there was always a sheriff's deputy's car that was parked there. When they got there, they told her that Sierra had not been answering her texts or calls, and that was really not like her. So she called it in as a missing persons report. The police and the FBI initially sought to interview Sierra's boyfriend, Josh. Josh said they left his place at 6:43 with him riding his motorcycle behind her. Josh said they parted ways as they approached her house, and that was it. A while later, he tried to reach out, and he couldn't get in contact with her. There was really nothing else to tell. After midnight, just a half a mile from where Sierra lived, a patrol officer saw a row of corn that had been disturbed. He exited his vehicle and walked towards the cornfield, and there was a pungent smell of gasoline and a little fuse box that was on the ground, and it looked really out of place. The police officer looked deeper into the disturbed area of corn and found a bicycle matching the description of Sierra's that had been sent over the radio to all the patrolmen. The bike was sitting up on its kickstand, and it was in perfect condition. It wasn't like wrecked or anything. He also found a pair of men's sunglasses. Ominously, though, blood was visible on the bicycle's handlebars and seat. There was also blood that was found on an orange-handled screwdriver at the scene, as well as Sierra's green sock, just one. There was blood that had been left on the surrounding corn stalks, leading like a path almost out of a makeshift cornfield tomb is what it looked like. Now, looking at the ground for clues, the policeman also discovered a motorcycle's tire tracks going into the ditch. Now, what's crazy is that Sierah's family was out looking for her, and they actually came across this roadblock that police had put up when they sectioned off this potential crime scene. They didn't know what the police were looking at, and the police didn't know if what they were looking at had anything to do with Sierah. But what was weird is that they were all just right there together at the same time. Well, police went to the media in an attempt to get any information from the public regarding Sierah and her suddenly going missing. They didn't get any leads based on this. However, it did make the community come together as a unit, and they all came together looking for her. Searchers in the hundreds and hundreds searched in the cornfields, the farmland, just anywhere that they could, and the local roadways, everywhere. They wanted to know if maybe Sierah collapsed somewhere. Maybe, I don't know, on her bike she needed help. You never know. So it could be something as innocent as that instead of a missing person, which is what they hoped. Well, a farmer in the area found a motorcycle helmet on his property and thought it would be a good fit for his son. But after seeing the news, he immediately called authorities. Now, both the inside and outside of this helmet were stained with blood. Now, this was interesting to detectives because if you remember, Josh had told them he was riding his motorcycle alongside Sierah. Josh was interviewed and he was overly helpful, even drawing a map of routes that Sierah would have taken to get home. Detectives zeroed in on Josh and his involvement in the disappearance. They asked him over and over his story, and it never changed. He repeated it over and over. They asked to search his house. He was fine with it. They immediately went to his residence, and he allowed them to search the house, the vehicle, whatever, his motorcycle, all his belongings. They discovered bloody coveralls in his garage. But as alarming as that sounds to you and me, in a rural area like this was common, as animal blood could cover a pair of hunting overalls easily after a long day of hunting. So the lab actually would later return this as just being that, animal blood. Josh was not a suspect. No longer. No way, no how. He was totally in the clear. And he was actually anything but a suspect. He was the opposite, because he had actually been secretly planning on asking Sierah to marry him in the near future. The investigation shifted. Usually they started and ended with the inner circle of the victim. This was now broadened into a stranger abduction. 16 hours into the investigation, Josh reported to the authorities that he had seen a suspicious large white van in the area that they were at earlier. He said that when it would slow down and he'd get up to it, it would surge forward. So he kept trying to follow it, but he was only able to get a few numbers from the license plate. Well, that was enough because police were able to locate the vehicle, and it came back to a female who allowed investigators to examine it, even using Blue Star, which is just like luminol, to look for any signs of blood, and anything. Nothing came out of it. There was nothing weird about it. It was just a coincidence. She had nothing to do with it. After a few days of absolutely zero movement in the case, a local officer investigating the case decided to get creative and investigate a local man who was not the brightest, but he'd previously been questioned in a different indecent assault case, and thinking that because of where he lived, he was also in close proximity to the area, and he knew the area, and he was a jabbermouth, and they went over and decided to question him to see if he'd heard anything about the potential murder, missing. We don't know at this point. Well, enter James Worley. He and his mom, they shared a few acres of land, including farmhouses and stables that stood close to the main house. The team of investigators, they went out to interview him and just get his take on what was going on. And upon their arrival, James was instantly upset, irritated at their presence. And they told him they were just searching for a missing girl. And immediately he said, "I'm not out there killing girls." Whoa. Detectives assured him that they were just looking into a case, not implying anything. So he calmed down a little and went on to tell the police that he was aware of the location that they were searching because, ironically, he'd lost his motorcycle helmet there because he had broken down earlier. He asked them if they found his helmet. Did they find his screwdriver? What about his sunglasses? Oh, and his fuses. Those items sound familiar, and yeah, they had found them. But it didn't lessen there's any suspicion at all. It increased it, because those were the exact same items that they found. So, not letting James know about their heightened awareness of him being a potential suspect, detectives just left the residence knowing they would have to get a search warrant for this guy's property. He was just acting too strangely, and while listing the exact items at the scene, too much of a coincidence, complete probable cause. When the detectives returned to the Worley residence, James was compliant, but just as chatty as before. He owned this garage/workshop, whatever, in one of his barns where he did all of his car and motorcycle maintenance for his little small engine repair shop that he owned. During the entire search, James could not keep his fat mouth shut, rambling and blabbing about all sorts of nervous, paranoid conversation. All this time he was denying involvement, saying it wasn't me, I don't know what you're looking for. Well, luckily, this was a tactic that investigators are quite familiar with, and it didn't faze or distract them. One of the evidence noted that some dirt had recently been swept to one end of the area of the barn, and after they moved some bales of hay, they uncovered a green wooden crate lined with chicken wire. When they opened it, they found various women's intimate separates and lingerie, but they were like all packaged, like individually in Ziploc bags and labeled. And oh yeah, there was duct tape in there too. Yeah, normal. Wait, hold on, one more thing. There was a freshly made sandwich that they found was in the wooden crate too. I mean, that left me stumped, but what the police actually believed happened was that someone was being held against their will there, and he was nice enough to make them a sandwich at least. Also interesting was that during James's interview, he said he had never seen Sierra. No, he had no idea who she was, and they never met. They didn't ask him. He just said it. When they asked him about the clothing they found, James informed the cops that the contents of that container were costumes and clothing for a pornographic project he was working on. Winner. Without being asked, James abruptly stated that he didn't steal anything, didn't kill anyone. Again, James, shut up. But you know what, in this case, actually keep talking. Based on these bizarre statements and the fact that he had what looked like fresh scratches on his arms and bruises on his legs, authorities swiftly locked down the location and performed an extensive search on the rest of the property. Police then discovered underneath a piece of plywood that had like little holes in it for you to pull it up, a makeshift dungeon. It was concealed inside the barn. Like, this dungeon was like, it was a chest freezer that was installed in a hole in the floor. Rope, tape, zip ties, handcuffs, weapons, ammo, video recorders, and film were all discovered inside this little crawl space. Attached to the walls of the freezer inside were restraints. And the freezer was lined with carpet. Oh, and the carpet contained what appeared to be bloodstains. And bleach was also coming out of the freezer. What were you cleaning, boo? Anyway, in addition, is there more? To this plywood dungeon, investigators found an inflatable air mattress and several sexual aids.
I'm a little freaked out.
Now, this was disturbing and concerning to the detectives, but they nervously opened the freezer. And they were relieved that they did not find anything inside of it. But all was not calm. There was a very, very strong odor of bleach that came from the freezer as well. So James, he stayed in their crosshairs for the time being. During a more intense line of questioning, James provided explanations for everything. He told police that the air mattress, that's for camping purposes. The lingerie, these gifts for women. And the freezer, well, that's for my weed. Again, all these things are normal, right? But the gifts, they just keep coming. Police found that James had murder and indecent assault kits everywhere throughout the barns. These kits had ski masks, duct tape, zip ties, and rope. They also found them in his car, underneath his seats. Wow, sounds like a great guy. What you planning, honey? Still, although this they found, it only established that James Worley was just pretty much a fat little sicko and probably not much of a Rico Suave as he thought that he was with the ladies, but still wasn't enough to be anything that would hold up in court. I mean, they needed to find out that he was responsible for a murder, and what they found out that he was basically a kinky little fat bastard. Well, even though they found all this wonderful evidence that potentially, could have led them to somewhere, they didn't find Sierra, and she wasn't located anywhere on the property. So with all this evidence, police were able to secure an arrest warrant based on these facts and substantiated probable cause for abduction. They just needed more evidence for the murder conviction. More evidence. And they needed Sierra because she still hadn't been found. Researching James Worley, detectives found that years before, it was discovered that James Worley was involved in an investigation with a girl named Robin Gardner. And she was riding her bike and got attacked by a man with a hammer. He hit her in the head, knocking her off her bike, and she fell to the ground. Now, he held her down, now in the cornfield, dragging her in there, and had her in a headlock till she was almost unconscious. He then dragged her to his truck and used handcuffs to subdue her. Luckily, the victim screamed and hollered and made so much noise that a motorcycle passing by, a fucking motorcycle. Do you have any idea how loud that girl had to be screaming? Anyway, she was able to get the attention of the biker, and they actually had stopped to see what was going on, and the victim was able to get on the bike and to get the hell away from James. Well, James was charged with abduction and served 3 years in prison for that. But that wasn't all. There was another case they came across. And mind you, this case was actually, they didn't find it. They were led to it by James. Because in his ramblings and his interview, he brought up a woman named Claudia Sissy Tinsley. Excuse me? What? Now, she was a girl, a working girl, a red light girl, addicted to drugs. You know, she had problems. And her mother had actually stated that on the day that she was last seen alive, she left in a car that was the exact same make and model as the car James Worley was driving at the time. He admitted that he was with her, but he said that they just drove around, that, you know, that he dropped her off. No one has ever seen or heard from her since. I don't know what happened. And no one has even been charged in her case because she'd actually never been found and there was no leads. There was just not enough proof to move forward with anything regarding James Worley. But I'm almost certain that as much as he likes to talk, he'll probably open up at some point regarding this case, you know, hopefully anyway. But back to the case. On July 22nd, a car passing by a farmer's cornfield called police when he saw a few rows of corn that had been disturbed. Now, this was something that was just constantly in the media. Guys, if you're passing by some area and it looks disturbed, let us know because we don't know where we may be able to find her one day. Well, that's what this man did. And when the man walked into the corn to see what had happened, he saw that some dirt had been moved around and the whole area looked like someone had been tampering with it. Agents were dispatched to the area and they started investigating the surrounding areas as well that were also disturbed. Again, they noticed that the area around them, all sorts of corn stalks were pushed down. It looked like somebody had been trying to walk into different areas. And then as they examined these areas, they smelled the distinct smell of human decomp.
Authorities searching an area around County Road 7 tragically found what we believe to be Sierra's remains.
The Fulton County Sheriff says authorities located the body in an area around County Road 7 Friday night.
Positive identification will be made through either fingerprints or DNA, but at this time, we strongly believe that this is Sierra.
Sierra was a remarkable young lady with a contagious smile. She was a loving person who has touched many people in her life. We miss her, and we will always love her.
They found her in a shallow grave on July 22nd. She was wearing an adult diaper. She'd been handcuffed, and she'd been silenced with a gag that was placed in her mouth. So there was a lot of work done to keep her quiet and keep her from escaping. It was later determined that some of the undergarments that they recovered from James's barn had actually belonged to Sierra. Sierra's official cause of death was asphyxiation. I mean, what is a blessing, though, and a mystery at the same time, is that they found no evidence of indecent assault. So what was his motive? On that same day that Sierra was found, James was also detained. He was officially charged with Sierra's murder and kidnapping. The prosecution claims that on July 16th, that they believe that James had actually used his motorcycle helmet as a way to knock Sierra off her bike and take her into his dungeon. Something had to have struck her that hard. Something like a helmet had to have been used because she had a hairline fracture in her skull. He then tied her up in the field, returned home. She was probably unconscious, knocked unconscious. He got his truck, who was later, actually they saw his truck going up and down that Highway 6 on CCTV camera. So yeah. Anyway, he returned her to his house and God knows what happened there. An inflatable mattress, the one that we talked about earlier, some underwear, and a roll of duct tape were all found to contain Sierra's DNA. The tape also had James's DNA. Now get this. This made me so mad when I learned this. They found a key ring that James used. On that key ring was a little weird key. It was a handcuff key and it unlocked the handcuffs that Sierra was wearing. Was this guy like using this as a little trophy with him, and like while he was shopping in the grocery store, looked down and got proud or something? What the fuck? Anyway, I mean, that's insane. And I mean, I got that directly from the court records. So, I mean, God, I love studiogstock. There's so much stuff on there. But good Lord, this guy. On March 27, 2018, a jury found James Worley guilty on 19 charges, including aggravated murder. He was given a death sentence, yay, but was given a stay of execution for his appeal, whatever. However, in 2020, July to be exact, his sentence was upheld. Haha. So as of 2023, he has one appeal left and is due to be executed in 2025. So come on, Father Time, let's keep it rolling. James Worley's primary barn.
Right now in Fulton County, the barn where James Worley held 20-year-old Sierah Joughin and murdered her is being torn down. It happened nearly 3 years ago. Amy Steigerwald is here to explain what's going to happen next with that property. Amy.
Well, Amanda, right now the family members tell us there are no exact plans for the property. They're just focused on taking this entire process one step at a time and not rushing into any major plans. The family has talked about building a playground there or some type of community space, but no concrete plans are set. For them, this barn was tough to drive by and see on an everyday basis. That's why tearing it down is so important. Sierah disappeared back in July of 2016 while riding her bike in Fulton County. Her convicted killer, James Worley, will be executed. Sierra's family received the property and the barn in a civil settlement last year. It's more than 3 acres of land and is currently in Sierra's mother's name. Her family says tearing it down is another step towards closure.
It's really, it feels really good. It's emotional and definitely hard, but it feels really good to be able to get rid of all the negativity that's associated with the barn.
Now, Sierra's family say they are especially grateful for everyone who has had a hand in helping them clear the entire property. Tonight at 5, I'll explain more about how the stain of this barn will be changed. Live in studio, Amy Steigerwald, WTOL 11.
Amy, thank you.
Yay. Holy shit. Anyway, one man was responsible for so much heartache. And Claudia's family, where's their closure? Because you know that he did it. You know he did. And I know that, like, legally he didn't. I have to say that, legal reasons. But come on. Hopefully that little fucker will talk in prison. Because, you know, he likes to talk. He's just an idiot. And maybe he'll confess to the right cellmate. And hopefully they'll get a deal for it. Because this little bastard needs to get turned in. But, you know, I mean, he doesn't have long. I mean, like I said, his execution's in 2025. So let's hope that sooner than later that pudgy fucker spills it. So anyway, that is it for this case. I don't know if this was kind of a famous one, but kind of not. But I just thought it was a really good one. It would fit the channel real well because, I mean, she's just such a great girl. The family seems so nice. And it just, the murderer is just such a piece of shit. And I love making fun of murderers. I love it. I mean, he's like a little porky pig little bastard. Oh, and I bet in jail he's just getting bigger and bigger and getting tossed around. I hope so. I hope that he's been getting, like, put around to all sorts of different, like, gangs to just have their way with him and stuff. And maybe they can make him feel like he is in a dungeon because he deserves that and a lot worse. So, and if there's any way I can start a GoFundMe to let me do the lethal injection in 2025, I mean, I'm not far from Ohio. I can do it. So I'll drive. I'll pay for all expenses. So just let me know. I mean, I can't guarantee I will give him all 3 injections. I might just give him 2 and let him wiggle around for a while. I know, I'm such a sadist when it comes to that, but I do like it. I do get an actual thrill when I think about that they suffer. I love it. Anyway. So I guess that's it. Until the next video, I'll try not to revel too much in the suffering of others. And until then, homicidal homies, I'll see you later. Talk to you later. Bye.
I'm a little freaked out. Like, I don't really understand what's going on.